chosen one. One of the most confusing experiences many people on a purpose-driven path encounter is the persistent feeling that they simply do not fit in. It is not always dramatic. In fact, it often shows up in subtle ways. You can be standing in a room full of people, surrounded by conversation, laughter, and activity, yet still feel slightly out of place. The people around you may be perfectly polite. No one is openly rejecting you, yet something inside you recognizes that the energy of the room does not quite match your own. You may notice this during casual conversations where others seem comfortable discussing topics that feel empty to you. Gossip, shallow competition, endless discussion about trends, appearances, and social status may hold the room's attention for hours. But after a short time, your mind begins drifting somewhere else. It is not that you dislike people or that you are incapable of social interaction. In fact, many chosen ones are observant, empathetic, and capable of connecting deeply with others. The difference is that surface-level bonding does not hold your attention for long. You may laugh politely at first, but eventually you begin sensing something beneath the words themselves. You notice the tone behind conversations, the hidden competition behind compliments, the subtle shifts in energy when someone new enters the room. While others may remain comfortable in the flow of social interaction, you begin feeling the tension between what is being said and what is actually meant. Over time, this awareness creates a quiet distance between you and the environments you enter. You begin realizing that the discomfort is not temporary. It appears in different groups, different settings, and different stages of your life. The same pattern repeats itself. You participate politely for a while, but eventually you feel the pull to step back. At first, this pattern can create self-doubt. Many chosen ones spend years wondering if something is wrong with them. They ask themselves why social environments that seem normal to everyone else feel exhausting to them. They try adjusting their personality, participating more actively in conversations that do not truly interest them, or pretending to enjoy dynamics that quietly drain their energy. But the longer this effort continues, the clearer one truth becomes. Forcing yourself to fit into environments that do not align with your nature requires you to shrink parts of yourself. Fitting in often requires adapting to the expectations of the room. It means laughing at jokes you do not find meaningful, ignoring behavior that conflicts with your values, or silencing the instincts that tell you something is off. Over time, this type of adaptation slowly distances you from your own clarity. The more you try to blend into environments that are built on different priorities, the more your internal compass becomes difficult to hear. This is where many chosen ones begin discovering an important truth about their wiring. The reason you struggle to fit in is not necessarily because you lack social skill. It is often because your design prioritizes alignment rather than assimilation. Assimilation focuses on matching the environment. Alignment focuses on remaining consistent with your values and purpose. When someone is wired for alignment, their internal awareness naturally resists environments that require them to compromise who they are in order to belong. This does not mean you are better than the people around you. It simply means your priorities are organized differently. Some people are energized by group belonging and shared social rhythm. Others are driven by meaning, growth, and purpose. When those priorities differ, the experience of the same room can feel completely different depending on who is standing in it. The chosen one often senses this difference earlier than others. You notice the emotional atmosphere beneath interactions. You recognize when conversations revolve around appearance rather than substance. You feel the tension when people compete for attention rather than supporting each other's growth. Over time, these patterns become impossible to ignore. You may try blending in temporarily, but eventually your awareness pulls you back into observation. And once that awareness becomes clear, forcing yourself into environments that conflict with your values begins to feel increasingly uncomfortable. It is important to understand that this difference is not a form of superiority. The temptation to interpret your separation from the crowd as proof that you are somehow better than others can become a trap. In reality, the difference is more accurately described as a difference in wiring and assignment. Some people are designed to maintain existing systems. Others are designed to question them. Some people thrive in environments that prioritize entertainment and social harmony. Others are driven by growth, purpose, and deeper transformation. When these two orientations meet, neither side is necessarily wrong, but the experience of the same environment can feel dramatically different. The chosen one's path often requires distance from certain cultural patterns, not because people are enemies, but because the assignment requires clarity that constant social noise can interrupt. Understanding this difference changes how you interpret your experiences. Instead of assuming that you are socially broken, you begin recognizing that your awareness is guiding you toward environments that match your deeper priorities. The discomfort you feel in certain rooms is not always rejection. Sometimes it is direction. And once you understand that you are not designed to fit into every room, the question shifts from why you feel different to where that difference is meant to lead. In the next part of this journey, the deeper reasons behind that difference become clearer, because the reason you do not fit into many environments often comes down to three powerful factors: your standards, your discernment, and the priorities that shape how you see the future. Once you stop assuming that something is wrong with you, a clearer explanation begins to appear. The reason many chosen ones struggle to fit into ordinary social environments is not a lack of social ability. It is the presence of deeper standards, sharper discernment, and priorities that operate on a completely different timeline from the people around them. These differences are subtle at first, but over time they become impossible to ignore. The first reason you often feel out of place is that your standards are simply higher than the room you are standing in. This does not mean you expect perfection from people, or that you move through life with constant judgment. It means your internal compass has a stronger reaction to things that harm, disrespect, or degrade others. In many social environments, people learn to normalize behavior that quietly damages trust and integrity. Disrespect may be disguised as humor. Manipulation may be framed as strategy. Gossip may be treated as harmless entertainment. In those environments, the majority of the room learns to laugh along and treat these dynamics as normal social behavior. But when someone carries a stronger sense of alignment with their values, participating in those patterns becomes difficult. You may notice yourself becoming quiet in conversations that revolve around tearing someone else down. You may feel uncomfortable when people celebrate shortcuts that compromise integrity. The things that others treat as harmless fun begin to feel misaligned with what you believe is right. That is why the chosen one often hears a quiet internal response when certain group dynamics appear. What they call normal, you call misaligned. This difference in standards does not always create open conflict. Most of the time, it creates a silent distance. You simply stop engaging in the same way others do. And when someone stops participating in behaviors that a group considers normal, the group begins noticing the difference immediately. The second reason you often feel out of place is your level of discernment. Discernment is the ability to sense what lies beneath the surface of a situation. It allows you to notice motives, emotional shifts, and subtle dynamics that others may overlook. While many people focus primarily on the words being spoken in a conversation, discernment pays attention to tone, intention, and consistency. You may find yourself noticing when compliments carry hidden competition, when kindness is used strategically to gain influence, or when someone's behavior shifts depending on who is watching. This awareness can make certain social environments feel unusually loud, even when the room itself is quiet. The surface conversation may sound friendly, but the underlying tension becomes impossible to ignore. Instead of relaxing into the rhythm of the group, your mind begins observing the emotional patterns moving through the room. When someone develops this level of awareness, pretending not to see what is happening becomes exhausting. Fake environments become especially draining because the energy required to ignore what you sense becomes greater than the energy required to simply step away. This is why chosen ones often feel overwhelmed in spaces where everyone else seems comfortable. The room is not loud because of noise. It is loud because of the hidden signals moving beneath the conversation. And once your discernment has sharpened to that level, returning to ignorance becomes impossible. The third reason you struggle to fit in is that your priorities are oriented toward long-term purpose rather than short-term entertainment. Many social environments revolve around immediate pleasure, image management, and maintaining social status. Conversations often focus on trends, appearances, and momentary excitement. There is nothing inherently wrong with enjoyment or celebration, but when someone begins thinking in terms of growth, legacy, and long-term purpose, the rhythm of those environments begins to feel different. While others may focus on what feels fun in the moment, you may find your attention drifting toward deeper questions about direction, contribution, and meaning. You may think about the kind of life you are building 5 or 10 years from now, rather than simply enjoying the present moment. You may care more about character development than popularity. You may feel more energized by learning something new or building something meaningful than by maintaining a social image. When these priorities become central to your life, conversations that revolve entirely around appearance and entertainment begin to feel incomplete. It is not that you dislike the people around you. It is that your mental language has shifted. You begin speaking in terms of growth, while others are speaking in terms of image. You think in terms of legacy, while others think in terms of visibility. You focus on purpose, while others focus on participation. The result is a quiet but persistent feeling that you and the group are speaking different languages, even though you are using the same words. This difference in language often explains why chosen ones feel comfortable with a smaller circle rather than a large crowd. Depth matters more than volume. Authentic conversation matters more than constant interaction. And environments that encourage growth naturally become more attractive than those that simply maintain social rhythm. But these differences do more than create personal discomfort. They also influence how groups respond to someone who refuses to conform. Because when a person enters a room and quietly declines to participate in its unspoken rules, the group begins reacting in ways that reveal how strongly it protects its own identity. And that reaction is exactly what we will explore next. Because the moment someone refuses to conform to a group's culture, the dynamics inside that group begin to change in very predictable ways. When someone enters a group but refuses to fully conform to its unspoken rules, the atmosphere in that group begins to shift in subtle ways. Social groups operate much like ecosystems. Over time, they develop shared behaviors, shared language, and shared expectations about how members should interact. These patterns create a sense of identity for the group. People know what kind of humor is acceptable, what topics are safe, and what behaviors earn approval. Most members naturally adapt to these expectations because belonging feels comfortable and stable. But when someone arrives who does not immediately follow those patterns, the group becomes aware of the difference almost instantly. The person who does not laugh at certain jokes, who does not participate in gossip, or who quietly declines activities that conflict with their values, introduces an unfamiliar element into the group dynamic. Even if the person says very little, their presence alone can disrupt the rhythm the group is used to. This happens because groups instinctively protect their identity. When everyone behaves similarly, the environment feels predictable and secure. But when one person behaves differently, it forces the group to notice its own habits more clearly. And when habits become visible, they can also begin to feel questionable. That is why non-conformers often trigger reactions that seem disproportionate to their behavior. The group senses the difference and begins responding in ways designed to restore the familiar balance. One of the first responses groups use is labeling. Instead of examining the difference openly, the group assigns a description to the person who does not fit. These labels often appear casual at first. Someone may describe the person as arrogant, boring, too serious, or simply strange. The label becomes a way to reduce the discomfort the group feels when encountering behavior that does not match its expectations. Once the label is applied, the group can return to its normal rhythm without examining the deeper reason for the tension. Labeling is a form of control. It allows people to simplify someone they do not fully understand. Instead of asking why the person chooses not to participate in certain dynamics, the group decides that the person must simply have a personality flaw. In this way, the group protects its own identity while isolating the individual who does not conform. Labeling is how insecure people regain control. It shifts attention away from the group's behavior and places it onto the person who stands apart. But labeling is only the first stage of the group's response. If the non-conformer continues to remain present without adapting, the group often moves to the next step, testing boundaries. This stage is more subtle and can appear in the form of jokes, challenges, or invitations that push the person toward behaviors they previously declined. Someone might introduce humor that crosses ethical lines, just to see whether the person will laugh along. Others may encourage participation in activities that conflict with the person's values, presenting it as harmless fun. Sometimes, gossip becomes the test itself. Someone shares information about another person in the room, watching carefully to see whether the non-conformer will join the conversation. These tests are rarely announced openly. They appear as normal social interactions, but their purpose is simple. The group wants to know whether the person will eventually betray their own boundaries in exchange for belonging. If the person gives in, the group relaxes because the difference has been neutralized. The individual has adapted to the culture of the room. But if the person continues to maintain their standards, the tension increases. The group recognizes that the individual cannot be easily absorbed into the existing pattern. At this stage, another response often begins to appear: exclusion. Exclusion does not always mean open hostility. In many cases, it appears quietly. Invitations become less frequent. Conversations happen without including the person who did not conform. Opportunities to participate slowly disappear. From the outside, this can look like rejection, but in reality, it is often the natural outcome of incompatibility between values and group culture. Groups tend to organize themselves around shared priorities. When someone's priorities differ significantly from the majority, the group gradually adjusts by reducing interaction. This is not always malicious. Sometimes it simply reflects the reality that two environments cannot function comfortably within the same structure. For the chosen one, this stage can feel confusing at first. It may appear that maintaining integrity has resulted in social distance, but what is actually happening is a process of alignment. The group is protecting its identity, and the individual is protecting theirs. When both sides continue operating according to their own priorities, separation becomes the natural result. What many people do not realize is that this separation often serves a protective purpose. The same group that labels, tests, and excludes a non-conformer would likely require that person to compromise their values in order to remain fully accepted. Remaining outside that dynamic preserves the individual's clarity and direction. But recognizing this truth requires a shift in perspective. Instead of interpreting exclusion as failure, the chosen one begins understanding it as information. The group is revealing that its culture and priorities are not compatible with the path that person is walking. And once this understanding becomes clear, the experience of not fitting in begins to transform from rejection into something far more valuable: guidance about where you truly belong. Once you begin recognizing how groups react to people who refuse to conform, a deeper realization slowly begins to form. What once felt like rejection may actually be protection. The experience of not fitting in, which at first feels uncomfortable and isolating, often carries hidden benefits that only become visible with time. Many chosen ones spend years believing that their distance from the crowd is a weakness, when in reality, it is one of the strongest safeguards placed on their path. Fitting in easily may feel rewarding in the moment because it provides immediate belonging, but it can also quietly trap a person inside cycles they were meant to outgrow. When someone adapts completely to the culture of the room they enter, they often begin accepting the same habits, priorities, and limitations that define that environment. Over time, those patterns become normal. People stop questioning them. They begin building their lives around what the group considers acceptable. But when someone cannot fully adapt to those patterns, something different happens. The discomfort they feel becomes a signal. It tells them that the environment they are standing in may not align with the direction they are meant to follow. In this way, not fitting in becomes a form of protection. It keeps you from becoming deeply attached to environments that would eventually slow down or distort your growth. The same social circle that feels welcoming today may also reinforce habits that quietly limit your future tomorrow. When separation occurs early, it prevents those patterns from becoming permanent. What appears to be social rejection can actually be a form of spiritual redirection. The second gift hidden inside not fitting in is direction. When someone repeatedly experiences discomfort in certain environments, they begin learning to listen to that signal rather than fighting it. Instead of forcing themselves to remain in rooms that drain their energy, they begin asking a different question. What kind of environment allows me to grow? Discomfort becomes guidance. Each time you leave a room where you felt out of alignment, your awareness sharpens. You begin noticing what kinds of conversations energize you rather than exhaust you. You begin recognizing which environments encourage growth rather than distraction. Over time, this awareness allows you to choose your surroundings more intentionally. Instead of chasing any form of belonging, you begin seeking alignment with people who share deeper values. These rooms often look different from the ones you once tried to fit into. They may be smaller, they may be quieter, but the conversations inside them feel different. People speak about building, learning, improving, and serving, rather than simply maintaining appearances. The difference in atmosphere becomes obvious. What once felt lonely now begins to feel purposeful. A third benefit of not fitting in is the development of character. When someone receives constant approval from the group around them, it is easy to measure their value by the reaction of others. But when approval becomes less predictable, the individual is forced to develop a different source of confidence. Instead of asking whether the crowd approves of their choices, they begin asking whether their actions align with their values. This shift creates self-validation. The chosen one learns how to trust their own judgment even when the room disagrees. They learn how to remain steady when others misunderstand their intentions. They learn that approval is not always a reliable indicator of truth. These lessons strengthen personal identity in ways that popularity never could. Over time, the need for constant permission begins to fade. Instead of waiting for the group to confirm their direction, the chosen one becomes comfortable walking forward with clarity, even when the path looks different from what others expect. The final, and perhaps most powerful gift hidden in not fitting in, is leadership formation. Leadership rarely begins in the center of the crowd. More often, it begins on the edge of it. Leaders are frequently isolated before they are trusted. They spend long periods observing how people think, how groups behave, and how decisions are made. During this time, they develop the perspective needed to guide others later. Someone who is deeply dependent on group approval cannot easily lead the same group. Their decisions would always be influenced by the desire to remain liked. True leadership requires the ability to act according to principle, even when the crowd is uncertain. That ability is formed during seasons when a person stands apart from the group, long enough to discover their own voice. You cannot lead a crowd you are still trying to impress. The distance created by not fitting in often becomes the training ground where independent thinking develops. It teaches the chosen one how to analyze situations without immediately adopting the majority opinion. It teaches them how to remain calm when social pressure rises. It teaches them how to value truth more than popularity. These qualities are not always comfortable to develop, but they become invaluable when the time comes to guide others through complex situations. What once felt like exclusion begins revealing itself as preparation. The same distance that once made you question yourself begins shaping the perspective that will allow you to help others later. The crowd you once struggled to fit into becomes the crowd that eventually benefits from your clarity and leadership. And when that moment arrives, the seasons of separation will no longer feel like losses. They will feel like the necessary path that shaped you into someone capable of standing apart without losing your direction. By the time someone truly understands why they never fully fit into certain environments, a quiet shift begins to happen inside them. The question is no longer why the room feels uncomfortable. The question becomes whether that room was ever meant for them in the first place. Many people spend years chasing belonging, believing that if they can just find the right way to blend into the crowd, life will become easier. They try adjusting their personality, softening their standards, or participating in dynamics that quietly conflict with their values. For a short time, this approach can create the appearance of acceptance. But the cost of that acceptance slowly becomes clear. Every time someone forces themselves to belong in an environment that requires self-betrayal, a piece of their clarity is lost. Their internal compass becomes harder to hear. Their decisions begin reflecting the expectations of others rather than the direction of their purpose. Over time, the effort required to maintain that version of belonging becomes exhausting. This is the moment when many chosen ones finally recognize the deeper truth behind their experience. The reason they never fully fit into the crowd was never meant to punish them. It was positioning them for a different type of impact. Lives built on purpose often look different from lives built on social approval. The circle may be smaller, the pace may be quieter, but the depth of the work becomes far greater. When someone stops chasing every room that offers temporary acceptance, they gain the freedom to build something meaningful instead. This shift begins with a simple but powerful decision. Stop forcing friendships that require you to betray who you are. True connection never demands that you silence your values in order to maintain access. If maintaining a relationship requires constant compromise of your integrity, that relationship is not alignment. It is pressure. Walking away from those environments may feel uncomfortable at first, but it creates space for healthier connections to appear later. The next step is investing in your growth privately. Many of the most important developments in a person's life happen outside the view of the crowd. Skills are sharpened in quiet hours. Character is strengthened through consistent discipline. Vision becomes clearer through reflection and learning. When chosen ones stop measuring their progress by the size of their social circle, they begin focusing on the strength of their foundation. The work done in private eventually becomes visible through the quality of their results. Instead of competing for attention, they become someone whose presence carries weight because it is supported by substance. The final step is learning how to choose environments intentionally. Not every room deserves your energy. Some rooms exist only to maintain habits you have already outgrown. Others are built around values that align with growth, learning, service, and faith. These environments may not always be loud or crowded, but they create the conditions where meaningful relationships can grow. When chosen ones begin entering spaces where people are building rather than competing, serving rather than performing, and learning rather than pretending, something powerful happens. the sense of being different begins to fade. Not because you have changed who you are, but because you have finally entered a space that speaks the same language as your purpose. Belonging in those rooms feels natural rather than forced. This is the moment when the long struggle to fit in transforms into a new form of peace. You realize that the discomfort you felt in the past was not a sign that something was wrong with you. It was a signal guiding you away from environments that could never support your growth. With that understanding, a new mindset begins to form. You no longer chase every opportunity to belong. Instead, you move through life with clarity about the kind of environments you are willing to enter. From that place of clarity, a simple declaration becomes possible. I don't fit in, and I'm at peace with that. I choose alignment over access. God will connect me to the right people in the right season. If this message reflects your experience and you're ready to stop chasing crowds that never truly understood you, take a moment to acknowledge it. Comment alignment if you are choosing to build your life around purpose rather than popularity. And if you want more Chosen One messages on discernment, separation, and elevation, subscribe so you can continue strengthening the clarity that guides your path.